Mafia Definitive Edition is a complete remake of the original and beloved cult classic Mafia game from 2002. Now, there's some skepticism out there, but it does look kinda cool and we can't help but hope for the best. Thankfully, it's releasing pretty soon, so like always, we figured we'd get you guys caught up on a new game with 10 things you need to know about Mafia. Starting off with number 10, let's just get this basic, obvious thing out of the way. Graphics and presentation stuff, this is all front and center. The game, as we said, has been completely rebuilt from the ground up. This isn't like an HD reskin or anything like that. It's remade gameplay, all new assets, from buildings to characters to period accurate vehicles. The lighting engine is completely new for this game and is said to really make a difference. All of the cinematics are completely new and motion captured with new voice acting, and the game is gonna support 4K HDR depending on your hardware. Oh, and also, original music themes return, as well as a bunch of licensed songs from the time period from artists like Django Reinhardt, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington. Honestly, all of this stuff is the first thing we got excited about, hearing that it's a completely new game from the ground up, seeing those screenshots when it was first announced, because honestly, the 2002 game is a classic and it's really cool and iconic and interesting, but it definitely needs an upgrade. Because with that, at number 9 now in the gameplay department, Mafia is definitely expanded upon. The main focus is still shooting and driving, of course. And also, thankfully, they kept in the fact that you have to worry about speeding in front of cops. Now, I said the word thankfully because despite that sounding bad, I know old school fans of the original game really love this type of stuff, this immersive stuff. The traffic law stuff doesn't seem like it's going to be as big of a gameplay thing to worry about compared to the heavy-handed way the old games did it, but yeah, it's still worth noting. And speaking of vehicles, period-accurate motorcycles are here. That is a pretty cool new thing and a series first. There's also some stealth, crouch walking, there's stealth attacks and picking up and hiding bodies. Then there's fist fighting, or you can use melee weapons like a baseball bat, and both involve melee attacks, charged melee attacks, and finishing moves. Now, third-person shooting plays out more like a traditional third-person shooter and has a full cover system. Think Mafia 2, Mafia 3. Although it does seem like there is a lot of realistic sway and recoil to your aiming, like an intense amount judging from videos. There is still some debate about just how much this looks and feels like Mafia 3 shooting. I've seen some fans concerned in comment sections, so I want to acknowledge that, but we'll make the final judgment when we get the game in our hands. Also, it's worth noting collectibles are here still, so we're going to be collecting period-accurate magazine covers and cigarette cards. So yeah, another thing to keep an eye on while you're playing. Now, next over at number 8, being a remake, of course, it's expected that a lot of the original content would remain, and we can confirm that is the case here. But some new stuff is also being added. For example, certain characters and missions are going to be fleshed out. So for example, Tommy's love interest, Sarah, is going to get more screen time, so we get to understand her as a character a bit more, and maybe a bit more of an idea as to why Tommy chose a life of crime. She's no longer just kind of like a set-piece character. Also, developers Hangar 13 is also fleshing out certain missions in the game and adding more set pieces. In an interview with US Gamer, Hangar 13 President and Chief Creative Officer Hayden Blackman said, and I quote, "We took a hard look at each mission and looked at whether or not we could add additional set pieces. If there was additional content we could put into those missions to flesh them out a little bit, or add more memorable moments to each without sacrificing the core narrative beats or the intent of the mission or the story overall." He also went on to acknowledge some criticism Mafia 3 faced with their repetitive side missions, and said that they were making it a point to make sure that the new missions being added are meaningful and actually have some substance to them. Honestly, that was one of our biggest gripes with Mafia 3, and it's really nice to hear Hangar 13 mention it and say that that's something that they're actively working on. Now, next over at number 7, the story, obviously, is the main thing here, the main focus. You can already tell from the gameplay demos, we're getting some nice, lengthy cutscenes. This is a single-player action-adventure game in an open-ish world, so the story is what needs to keep you hooked. The traditional movie-style but very fun tale of the original game is absolutely returning here, which is really nice to see. The story is the same, and I quote, "for the most part," the developers' words, not mine. They've made sure to say that all of the big plot points are there, all of the iconic missions are there, and like we mentioned, some things that were small in the old game are going to be expanded upon. I'm just happy to hear that they're respecting the original, but we have to see the whole thing before we truly believe it. Even the writer-director of the original Mafia game went on record expressing skepticism. Maybe it's a lack of faith in Hangar 13 after Mafia 3, or 2K in general, I don't know. Thankfully, early preview videos and comparisons of the opening sections definitely definitely show a respect and restraint for the original, or at least judging by the intro hour or so of the game. From the cab getaway, Tommy getting chased through the streets to that quirky music, the Salieri's bar, all that stuff seems to be there, and that's good. Now over at number 6, Lost Heaven, Illinois is a fictional city based on 1930s Chicago that was iconic when the game first released, and like everything in this new version, it's being rebuilt from the ground up. That being said, some areas I've been able to see so far look strikingly familiar. It seems like they're going for more of an optimization route. The open world setting has been updated to be more populated and have some similar world interactions and NPC reaction systems and traffic systems that Mafia 3 had, and generally just stuff you expect from an open world city game in 2020. Because the original city was cool, but it was 2002, so it was kind of straight up dead. And more interestingly though, the city has been redesigned in certain areas to make it either look cooler or be more interesting and fun to drive in, because the game is so based around driving and chasing. And some streets are wider, some turns are different, stuff like that. But it's all based off of the game's original geometry, so it should feel familiar, and all major landmarks are there. And the countryside area is no longer separated by invisible walls and a loading screen, which is nice. We also have an official look at the game's map here. We're just looking forward to experiencing the authentic time period vibe and the music and the people and day and night and just the difference in the districts. That's where all this stuff is really gonna matter. Now over at number 5, it's worth pointing out that the entire cast of the game has been recast for this game because they are retelling the story in a bigger, more blown out fashion, and looking into the original cast to return but realizing it wasn't viable, the game's creators decided to roll with an all new cast, most notably actor Andrew Bongiorno as the lead character of the story and the man you play as, Tommy Angelo. They're using his voice, his likeness, and his performance capture, and the same goes for a lot of the other main characters in the story. So it seems like they really wanted to go all out and bring in new pros and build an, and I quote, ensemble cast. That being said, I am really gonna miss the original Tommy. Apparently a lot of work was put in to create authenticity around all the voice actors' accents here. Seeing as it's based around a 1930s style Chicago, not New York like people commonly associate with these gangsters, there is a difference, so it's nice to see them paying attention to these details. Now over at number 4, just a goof real quick, that damn race car mission has returned. They have confirmed it is in the game, and they have shown it off. It was a notorious mission back in the day where you had to steal an old-timey race car, drive it through the city streets without crashing it, and then even do a real race with it and win. And it didn't control very well. It was where a lot of players got stuck, and it's not a big deal, it's just kind of funny because over the years it's gained a little bit of a reputation and it was worth pointing out. And honestly, we're glad they didn't shy away from keeping it in the game. We definitely respect them for including it here. Now over at number 3, for those PC players, we're gonna break down the system requirements. The requirements aren't anything crazy, which is good, so it's pretty accessible. First, we'll run through the minimum requirements. For CPU, you're looking at an i5 2500K for Intel users and an AMD FX 8120 for AMD users and 6 gigs of RAM. For GPUs, you're gonna be looking at a GTX 770 for NVIDIA users and a Radeon R9 280X for AMD users. Now for recommended specs, you're looking at an i7 3770 for Intel users and an AMD FX 8350. If you're an NVIDIA user, it's recommended to use a GTX 1080 or Radeon RX 5700. And it's also recommended that you have 16 gigs of RAM, and the game will take up 50 gigabytes of hard drive space. So now you know, there it is. It's fairly accessible on both ends, honestly, which is good if you don't have an insane PC build. So yeah, now you know. Now down to number 2, we also have to talk about next-gen consoles. This is a thing now we have to acknowledge, since we're getting to that time between consoles where some releases are kind of in this weird limbo. There are more and more games that are either coming out or have already been released that are being upgraded for next-gen consoles. Cyberpunk, GTA 5, Control, The Witcher, just a few examples. It seems that Hangar 13, as of right now, has no plans for a next-gen upgrade. They did go on record saying that they will be forward compatible, which is required by console manufacturers. So you will be able to play Mafia on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or S, but there won't be any developer side added benefits really. Hangar 13's president Hayden Blackman did mention that something like a next-gen upgrade would depend on the success of the game, so it isn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. If we're being honest though, the game looks fine in its current form, so if we don't get a next-gen upgrade, I think it might be okay. As long as you can play it on the things, that's good, so yeah, let's see what happens. Because down to number 1, of course, the last point, we have some housekeeping to get out of the way. Mafia Definitive Edition is launching on September 25th, 2020 on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. There's only the standard edition of the game for $40, or you can buy the Mafia Trilogy for $60, which comes with all 3 Mafia games. Now, if you do end up going with the Trilogy, you do get some bonus stuff for Mafia 1. You get Vito Scaletta's leather jacket and one of his classic cars, and you also get Lincoln Clay's army jacket and his muscle car from 3. There's also a pre-order bonus. If you pre-order before launch, you get access to the Chicago pack that comes with a pretty snazzy white suit, a really nice car, and a gold semi-automatic handgun skin. That's it, honestly. For the most part, this release seems to be nice and simple and to the point, and we appreciate that. But that is Mafia Definitive Edition. Those are the things you need to know to be caught up before it releases. So we want to hear from you guys down in the comments what you're thinking. Did you play the original, or are you going to experience it now for the first time? Do you have reservations? Do you have excitement? What do you think of Mafia 2 and 3? Let's talk about anything in the Mafia series down in the comments. If you learned something, maybe we helped you out, kept you informed, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. And if you're new, maybe consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.